Hey there, I'm Andrew Malacy. Welcome to the Hand Tooler YouTube channel. Today I've got this plane I picked up at a yard sale or a flea market or something I had going on at a local church. And it was to benefit the preschool they had there. And it was the end of the day. They had this thing left. It was pretty rusty. And it's about the size of a number 3, but it's just a no-name plane. Made in the USA is the only thing we have there as an indicator. Got it for like 5 cents, I think. Anyways, I've tried it out. It's not the best smoother. It works though. I mean, it shaves wood, but it's got some nice things about it. Like it's got some brass there, but it's got a steel knob. I think I can cannibalize some of this. It's got a fairly functional, good enough blade. So there's the blade. But look at this really interesting frog. It's the bare bones. It's just, you see that? It's just a support right here, and then it just rests on the sole on the inside there. So this obviously is just, it was meant to be utilitarian, get the job done, and I don't know how actual grade of quality is. Like I said, I've not really used it. I've trued it up a little bit, but I figured I wouldn't invest too much time in it. Long story short is it's been sitting under my bench for a while, and I don't really use it. I thought about giving it away, but it takes a little bit of fiddling because the other thing is it has no lateral adjustment, so you do have to fiddle with it. So I thought, you know what? It's got no lateral adjustment. It's got really no frog to speak of that we could salvage for anything else. The only thing it's got going for it are a couple of parts, like the tote, the front knob, some brass, and the blade. Then I realized so the blade is about 1 3/4 inch wide, 1 3/4 inches wide, and this is about 1.5 inches. It's a nice piece I have here. It's been sitting around waiting for a rainy day. I thought what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it down the middle of the usable part where that wormhole is not, where that worm is. I'm going to chop that off and then just cut it right there. And I'm gonna sandwich these and turn it into a coffin plane, I think. I'm gonna turn it into a wood smoother, see if that does anything. Maybe it'll look cool, and then who knows what I'll end up doing with it. But I'm gonna give it a chance, see what's gonna happen with this, because all by itself, I don't know. Don't really have a use for it. So thanks for joining me today on this build where I'm gonna be making this coffin plane. I hope you enjoy it. Alright, now that I've got them all cut and they're the same length, I'm going to decide what the orientation is going to be. So here's a reference face, and here's a reference face with my 2 reference edges. What I've done is, since these came from this long piece, I've marked the grain direction. You can see I've marked it with the pencil here. And so if you were to be planing this, you'd want to take it this way to not tear out. So I'm going to keep that in mind when I assemble this. So I'm going to have one of these be on the inside and one be on the outside. I'm going to do it like this. And so now the grain will be going this way. So as I push forward, I won't be going against the grain. And I'm not sure if it actually matters, but I'm going to give myself every chance of success on this one. Now, I'm not an expert on planes, or much less the wooden planes, so there might be an actual angle that this could be best set at. But what I'm going to do is start by at least taking this bevel gauge and then lining up with the angle of this plane as it is. So here it is, square on my on my bench. I'm just going to sight across it until it matches the angle. So here's the angle of it. Pretty dang close to 45, I'd say. So I made a line across here at 7 inches, which is about the length I want, so I have this much more to cut off later. And there's the angle of my iron right there. All right, looks pretty good. Now we're gonna put them back together, see exactly how that feels. All right, so I like that. It leaves just enough room. If you look on the bottom here, there's the very front of it. There's where the blade is gonna protrude to, and then we're gonna have an opening in front of it. So I think that leaves just enough on the front and the back to balance it all out nicely. This is exactly the center of the whole piece here to here. And that means the protrusion here and here are gonna be lined up, are gonna be exactly mirrored of each other. But I think that gives me enough room for my hand and enough room for a mouth in the front. Now I'm gonna transfer all these lines around. And they do, they line up quite nicely. Very, very close. All right, now we're gonna transfer those to the inside as well, because now we're gonna, before we glue these up, we're gonna cut the inside out. All right, so now I'm gonna mark my depth on the top and bottom. And just to sort of get an idea if I'm close, I'm gonna, you see, it comes right to the middle of the hole there, right there. All right, you can see the two marks there, and let's see if the blade will fit between them. Exactly. All right, now it's time to draw out where we're gonna have the abutment for the wedge and where the iron's gonna be seated. So imagine that we're gonna put the iron like that, and we need to have a wedge, like this wedge, which came from a grooving plane that I have, or a tongue plane that I have. And this is about a 10-degree angle, and we're gonna try and copy more or less this. So what I've done is I've taken my square here, and I've just hooked it over the edge until like if it was 45 before, I've taken it and I've just adjusted it to 55 right there. And for this, I'm gonna line them up like that and transfer the line. Looks pretty good to me. All right, here too, we're gonna make sure our iron, you wanna transfer that line just to there for sure, and to here as well. Just extend the mouth. We're gonna bring the line across using our square. So what's gonna happen is we have this where the wedge is gonna go right here. And so that means the shavings won't really have an easy time getting out. So we'll have to actually relieve behind this right here, take it in a little deeper. We'll do that later, but we're gonna cut this out first, this wedge shape out, and then take it down to depth. All right, we're gonna take it real close to the line, if not all the way down, and do that all lines. Got them ready to go. Let's see how they line up. I'm nervous. That's the top. That's pretty nice. Bottom's a little off, but it's okay. Now we're going to start some waste removal on these. Just stay away from your lines. All right, so I've got it all cut out. I think it's pretty close to depth. There's the top, which will be the back. The front will be right here. Looks good to me. There's the bottom. Let's do a test fit of the iron. Here's the iron. I took the cap iron or the chip breaker off, and it fits just barely. Well, not really. Close there. Close there. Just barely does not go in. All right, that's good to know. Okay, so I just took it down another, I don't know, 1/16 total. Just widen the mouth a little bit. I think I did pretty well. I might have taken a little bit too much. It does not figure. For this, we're gonna basically come like a little ways here and then cut it back into this line. All right, so this is about 7/8 of an inch deep on this side. What I'm gonna do is take it back to 5/8, which is a quarter less, and that will be, that quarter inch will be, that's left over there, will be the depth of the abutment. I'm gonna run that basically, well, most of the way to the front, not quite all the way. Because we're going to remove a lot of this down to that line there. All right, I'm going to measure to the opening here. You can measure from the front, but since I'm going to chop some off the front, I've got to measure from the back. Get a basic idea of where the front is. All right, so the front sits right there. We're going to want to add a little bit on so it can relieve some room. That'll give me room for my hand to be able to reach in. The bottom of the escapement is there, the front of the escapement's there, and there is the line I just marked. So there'll be a little bit of an angle, and we can pull out the shaving right there. You can make it more if you wanted, I'm sure. And I'm being conservative, so we can always take out more. Now, then I'm going to draw an angle from the front to here. And that is the escapement area right there. All right. These are going to meet up. We'll remove this, most of this here, and make a transition. All right, here's the scary part. I'm going to take a large chisel here. I'm going to start tapping out some waste. All right, that's nice. Great. Trying to stay away from my line. All right, so there it is, all cleaned up. I have to shape the top there, but looking good. I'm going to do the next one now. What do you think? Is that starting to look like a plane? All right, I made the relief cuts on the top. It's getting close. So now I've got to account for that. All right, This is my Franken plane at the moment. I've got it, it's a little off kilter, but it took a shaving, so check this out. I'll call that good for now. I'm gonna glue this sucker up and then head out. So it's the next day. I'm going to take this out of the clamps. This is exciting. It actually looks like a plane at this point. Nice. All right, I'm satisfied with that glue joint. All right, I got the glue cleaned up, and now I'm gonna I've sharpened the blade. Now I'm gonna give it a test run. Here we go. As far as surfaces go, that's really smooth. You can see it's really cutting only on one particular part of the blade. So I'm gonna have to fidget, but it's looking good so far. I did some fiddling to get the iron to protrude evenly. Had to open up one side a little bit, and the iron was a little out of 90 out of square. So here we go, some shavings. A little heavy, but it's working. Next is going to be to cut down the wedge a little bit. It's just too high for how short this blade is. I've marked the protrusion of the blade on the back, so I want to leave a little bit. I want to leave a little bit there, I think. So that's what protrudes, and I'm going to cut maybe ½ inch or more off. All right, so there it is with the shortened wedge. Got it looking pretty good. Also, I think I'm gonna have to open this mouth up in the front. It's really hard to get in there. As far as how it works as a smoother, I'm really pleased with the result. You can see the sheen on there. 0 tear out. I'm really impressed. I think all that's left at this point is to chop it down and start shaping it, and then make any final refinements I might need to. I feel like it could be a little too high, so I'm gonna have to maybe round it. I don't know. Okay, I couldn't wait. I had to put it into action. Here we go. Ooh. I've never used a wood smoother before. What I'm finding that's really nice about it is the way it burnishes as it passes. So this is pretty cool. One of the things I got to do is fine tune the wedge, and so what I did is I just stuck it in there, seated it, got it all straight and working great. Then I just traced around the inside, and I'm going to remove and just make it all even, not necessarily down to the lines. But I'm going to make it all even around the lines. There we go, that was quick. Ready to do the shaping, and so what I've done is I've just marked out some lines using my finger based off of that shape roughly. And then I took the lines and transferred them up and across and around. And that's how I'm gonna shape the coffin look, the coffin shape. All right, I did more shaping. I put the little corners in. I think it's a little too elongated, but I'm not going to change it at this point. I made a little fastening across the top for comfort and also to sort of extend the corners. I'm going to round a little bit on the edges here so they don't dent as easily, and I'm going to move ahead on the finish work. All right, I've just gotten the plane, I think, finished. I put more of a taper on the front, and I left the back a little bit more squared off, and then I rounded it slightly, but I wanted all this faceting and bevels and stuff to really show up. I gave it a nice sanding, made sure I removed most of the tool marks, but I left some here in the mortised area. Clean up the wedge, and I think it's ready to go. I'm gonna put one coat of wipe on poly and then wax this sucker like crazy. One thing I forgot to do before I put on the poly was to put this little strike button on, and this is just a little cap that goes over whenever you screw something in. You can put this over so it looks like it's finished. So I have one of these, and I'm just going to put it right smack dab in the center. And I like the contrasting wood color. Well, there it is. That's the end of it. It was a 2.5-day process, more like 2.5 nights. I spent 2 good night sessions down in the basement here working on it, and then I just finished up the details tonight in like a half session. I have to say that this has got to be my favorite DIY shop tool that I've ever done. I have some things about it that I don't love, like more or less aesthetically. I don't like how tall it is this way, and I would have maybe made the bedding angle even higher than that, but that's really it. It turned out to be really, really beautiful. I think also maybe I should have used a harder wood. This seems a little soft, much softer than I realized, but man, that was actually kind of a stroke of genius. You see my initials, AFM 2018? I was just like, wow. I was gonna put it right across the bottom or above and below, and then I was just like, why don't I make it around the button? And it turned out beautiful. So I'm gonna give this away to somebody, a friend of mine who's given me a ton of walnut and cypress and just different woods. So this is to you, you know who you are. So thanks so much for that. And anyways, I'm really, really pleased with this. I'm kind of glowing about it, I'm ear to ear even, about how well this turned out. I managed to use, I didn't pay a cent basically. I paid for the plane that I wasn't using at a yard sale, a couple pennies, and salvaged the iron from it. It's very soft steel. I put a new bevel on it, and as you can see, the bevel is already worn back quite a bit. So the secondary bevel is, so whatever. The other thing is I realized just how much goes into this, and almost all of my work was fidgeting with it. The original, like the actual work involved in cutting the angles and stuff like that is really not a problem. It's not a problem at all. It was just all fidgeting, get it to look good, but also getting it to really, really work well. And even at the end, I have a little bit of catching inside the mouth just because if there's anything at all, they don't catch. So I tried as best as I could. I think it's gonna work really, really well as a smoother. It won't work for hogging anything off, I can tell you that. Even now, just on that pine, there's some scratches on the bottom. Hey, it's a user though, whatever. The other thing is that I just didn't take into account how difficult the wedge would be to fit perfectly, especially with a double iron like this. You live, you learn. I recommend you go watch David W's plane building series or Young G. They have a lot of information that I was sort of referring to, but particularly David W has a system for making his wedges that only after I had started this that I had realized. He makes the wedge first and then basically, or has a wedge pattern and then fits the wedge and then the wedge pattern in the slots, and then he knows his wedges are ready to go. So that makes a ton of sense. If I were to do this again, that's exactly what I would do. I love the button again. I think that was a perfect solution. And I don't know. I'm just kind of can't believe I made this. It actually works, and my shop tools are getting better over time. And I don't know. I guess maybe the only downside of using this, because it really puts a great finish on, considering it's shop made. Here's the finish of the board I was just making. There's no plane tracks really at all that I can feel or even see. If you look, I have raking light across there. It's got a great sheen. The tear out, it does have some tear out in the corner, and that's also, that's another thing, is I miscalculated on the front of the mouth there, so a little too big. If you look here, I'll put it in just to get an idea. You can see just how much is left over there, and that's just my miscalculation. That trench, it's really nice because it centers the iron really nicely. It slips in and it keeps it almost captive. There's very little play at the bottom, and that's by design. One thing I like about this gluing them together trick is that if you mess up, if it's too wide or something, you can just shave off each half and then it'll get narrower. The other thing that I should have done, and I realized this after I'd already glued it up, is you make it longer, and then what you do is you drill through it as you're doing everything before you even start. And then what you do is you just create, like, you put dowels through it or screws or something, and then they have like locator pins, and all you have to do is just, it works kind of like biscuits or dominoes or something like that, and it'll just put it all together. So my glue up was almost a disaster because it took me forever to get this all put back together correctly, but it worked, as you can see. Anyways, I'm really, again, ecstatic about this, and I've not seen many really traditional coffin plane builds on YouTube, so hopefully this is one of the first of many. They're out there, but they don't, a lot of them are very like Krenov style, or they have the bar that goes over, and not many use this wedge system with the double iron, or, you know, just the traditional style. So I hope this has really been useful and enjoyable for you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below, because I'd love to talk about this more. I wish I could. I've already been rambling on, but the video is long enough already. So thanks so much for joining me here at the Hand Toolery. I'm Andy Malaysia. Have a great day. See you next time.